Coming up on this week's episode of the Xennial Odyssey podcast.
I wanted to come on here and do a show that's just dedicated to him.
I haven't met a lot of people that the minute I met them, I'm like, oh, he's one of the good ones.
Yes.
He knew death was coming, and he was like, I'm going to face this.
Surgery and procedures that are not legal in the United States.
Welcome. This one's for Pat.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Bobby Rocks here, joined, as always, with Remy.
Hi.
And
I'm eating munchkins.
We're going to do a little something different on this episode today. For people out there who may or may not remember, in one of the early episodes, I talked about our good friend Pat McDonough, known as DJ Pat, known as DJ Bean. Well, today is actually... sadly, the 5-year anniversary since his passing. So I wanted to come on here and do a show that's just dedicated to him. And a big reason because of that, not just because without that, I mean, I think Remy and I, we wouldn't have the idea to even do this.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a background in anything. But most importantly, Pat was born the same year as me. He fits into the Xennial category, but to me, he epitomized everything that was good about millennials. That's what I think.
Pat was, to give a little context, Bob was invited on a radio show that Pat did called Where You Been. And Bob was kind enough to be like, Remy's a jackass, but he lives and bleeds music. And that's what Where You Been was. It was a music show that played deep cuts from 90s albums. Come on, phone. Now's not the time. But I remember Bob had invited me, and I always wanted to do radio. I'm obsessed with music, and I love the idea of just being able to talk and banter about it. But I was nervous because when you're invited into a vibe, you can sometimes be the Band-Aid. You can sometimes be the thing that stands out if there's already a gel and a flow. And there was to how they did their show. It was amazing. But the thing was exactly what Bob just said is Pat was pure. I haven't met a lot of people that the minute I met them, I'm like, oh, he's one of the good ones.
Yes.
He's a Muppet in a world of zombies. Like, you know what I mean? Just for his purity and his kindness. And Pat was goofy, but there was such a charm to him. But the thing is, and there's a point to this, is within an episode, I felt comfortable with these guys.
And that's a kudos to Pat. And we'll go more into that specific thing because I do feel like that no matter who you talk to, the one thing that will come across to people or what people would say about Pat is that it's almost immediate. He made you feel like you'd known each other forever, and it was a comforting thing.
Yeah, and he was like happy to see you. Pat had this way of being happy to see you. Not a lot of people do it, where he'd be like, oh, and he'd come up and give you a hug, make a few inside jokes that you had with him. Yeah, I don't know, man. Pat's passing for me. And it's not to make it about me because it's not at all, but it was brutal. I didn't go to the service. I didn't, and I regret those things, but I also understand why I did those things. But yeah, he's just a beautiful, beautiful dude. And the radio show was such a shit show.
Oh yeah,
it was a masterpiece.
It was a beautiful shit show.
Yeah, like you know what? I'm gonna have Bob, and Bob's probably gonna do this anyway. Link some clips in here of the radio show.
I can do it. Yeah, I can do a little bit of that. Naeem, who's a super fan, who lives out in L.A.
has it all capped.
Oh yeah, he used to do it cloud based even back in like 2011.
I know, what an amazing person.
And he's posted things every now and then. He tends to post around the anniversary of his passing or his birthday. There was a time 2016. That is 2017. Sorry. In the fall of 2017 was alumni weekend at Bridgewater State.
Yeah,
and
by the way, where the radio show was out of.
Mm-hmm. And we did a remembrance show to Pat, and that was awesome because Andy Mounter. I love Andy Mounter. Andy Mounter, I met through Pat.
Mounter.
Yeah, that was the joke. Andy, not gonna mount.
I remember.
Yeah, so. But yeah, I don't want to go on and on again. I want to tease a little bit because there's so much area to cover. Mm-hmm. So we'll do our usual, play a song. I think you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on Soundstripe. I'm going to find a song that is reminiscent of World Party, of World Party, because that was the intro song for Where You Been. and we'll play that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that on the XOP. And as always, everybody, welcome to the Odyssey.
Welcome. This one's for Pat.
All right, welcome back.
Spiraled
everybody.
ham.
Spiraled ham. Or rum ham.
Rum ham.
Rum ham.
Yes,
All right.
floating at sea.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know. Do you want me to just jump off? I
Yeah,
can
man, start
it.
something. I
Okay.
mean, let's just let it flow, I think.
All right. So for people who don't know, if I haven't mentioned it before on the show, I first met Pat in 1999. We were juniors in high school. He attended Cardinal Spellman in Brockton. He's from the town of Hanson, Massachusetts, and I lived in the town of East Bridgewater, and we just happened to decide to work. We didn't know each other before this. We just happened to apply and get hired by a Shaw supermarket, which is a New England chain of supermarkets, and we worked at the one in Hanson, Massachusetts. Shout out Hanson.
Bop.
And Pat was one of the people that worked in the grocery department. I had a friend from high school who worked, and he was like, yeah, get back here. And so one of the things they do is you shadow people who work, and you learn how to do your job. And I would shadow everybody, but when I would shadow with Pat, I mean, he was just so inviting. He was just so nice and helpful. And then we would bond over music, and I mean, we could just talk about music all day. And my favorite thing is then we go on break, and he would always go to the deli and get turkey and provolone on a bulky roll.
Right,
Yeah.
those memories.
Yes. So we worked there together for about 2 years, and then kind of went our separate ways. And I believe we both went to Massasoit Community College, and we would cross paths. And oh, hey, Pat, what's going on? And then I graduated from there, and I went to Bridgewater State, and I was doing my program, and through a mutual friend of mine, we were in class. There's another friend of hers, and we just would strike up conversations. And then she actually had the show on the Sunday night before Pat did. Before it was Where You Been, she called it That's So Boss. But
I remember you guys, yeah.
It was a similar setup. It was 90s music. Her name is Rachel Mashad, by the way. And she actually invited me on that show, and she said, "Oh yeah, I hosted with 2 other guys. They're from the area, like, this, that." I said who you were, and "Oh, do you know Pat McDonough?" And I was like, "Yeah, is he on the show?" "Yeah." So again, I went up there. I mean, we had their great, "Oh, it's so great to see you," all that, and we would do the shows, and I would just have those awkward moments and terrible faux pas, chewing gum on the microphone,
all that stuff, yeah.
Just getting over the awkwardness of doing a show. And realizing that who gives, like this, for example, even this was my mindset. If people are listening, it's fine. You're not here. I was self-conscious about that, but I got over it.
Yeah.
And that's when I got comfortable, and then we started to form a flow. And when Rachel graduated, the show went to Pat.
Yeah, okay.
And so Pat changed the name to Where You Been. He kept the format the same. And then because of my work schedule, I was infrequently on there. But then I got a work schedule where I had Sunday nights off, so I would go to the radio station and at Bridgewater State University, and we'll just go on and we would just play music. He started to get interns, which I thought was kind of cool. And my favorite is, and I'll shout out intern Kelly, but my favorite about intern Kelly is literally she told us before we went on the air. So we're playing music, but we're not talking. And she told us that, like, "Oh yeah, I'll just kind of jump in where I can and all that." And so we're backstage. We're in the little area where Pat used to sit, and we're just picking songs left and right, all this stuff, and we're picking obscure tracks, all this. We're game planning on the fly how we're gonna approach talking about it, and then we did, and then we kicked it to her, and there was like that cricket silence, and then there was this. In 5 minutes, you guys have humbled me in just your knowledge of 90s music.
Yeah, deep cuts.
Yeah, and I'm literally like, well, it goes beyond Matchbox 20. So,
yeah, we tormented her. You know what? In hindsight, intern Kelly, funny character, man. Funny character. This androgynous girl who's like, it's said with love. That's her. But it was interesting because we were grown ass men. She was a kid.
Yeah, we're literally 10 years older than she is. So it's like,
But there was a desire to learn, but she was definitely the babe in the woods a lot, and we that's the thing about an intern, right? You kind of make that obvious.
Except when she would talk about going to Club Hell.
Well, yeah, that was the most interesting thing about her. She's like this little nerdy girl, and then she's like, fetish night.
Yeah.
And every 3 episodes, she's like, yeah, so I had a ball gag in my mouth, and these 3 guys behind me. And we're like, hey, I don't know if we can tell those stories on here, though.
Okay.
Yeah, and then one day I was just like, no, forget it. I can't tell that story.
So now I'll bring it back around to Pat. So I think we did the show until like 2013, and then he graduated from Bridgewater State, and he was going to go to school because he reached out to me several months after that, and he told me he was going to school in Boston for radiology. Like, he wanted to do radiology, and he wanted to incorporate music into it when he would work with patients who were sick or ill.
That's cool.
Or had cancer or anything. And the last I spoke with him was around late 2013, early 2014. And what happened is between a lot of that time, I moved. I got a full-time job that was far away. And then I moved in with my girlfriend. We got engaged. And then I remember Pat had always said that if I wanted or needed a DJ, that he would DJ the wedding. For people who don't know, he actually DJ'd my brother's wedding. And that's what the thought was in my mind. So I would reach out to him, and then I wouldn't hear back. And I would reach out, and I wouldn't hear back.
Which isn't common for Pat.
Yeah, and that's not common at all. And then one day, good mutual friend Tony DeLuca, Tony D, for people who remember Where You Been, he reached out to me, and he just was very vague, and he had said, well, Pat has been sick. He's been in and out of the hospital, so that's why. I just wanted to give you that heads up. And I'm like, all right. And then Pat randomly texted me and was just like, I'm so sorry. I was in the hospital. Please don't be disrespected by that. And so he goes,
such a good dude.
Yeah, give me a call. So I gave him a call. And to me, the first tell was that his voice was very weak and trembly, and he did not have a voice like that. And so he was telling me that about his hospitalization, and I told him I was getting married and want to be, and you could hear in his voice, like there was that change of like a humility, like oh wow. And so then he said, yeah, we can meet up, but I may be going in and out of the hospital. And it took about 6-7 months, but we finally met up.
Yeah. And
when we met up, by that point, Tony D had said that Pat had cancer, and he was just fighting through it. But it was his wishes to keep it private. I respected that. So
yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, he was living with his mom in Duxbury. So he said, "Oh yeah, you can come get me."
For me, I'd seen it. Not to interrupt, but I'd seen a picture of him, and he had just lost so much weight.
Yes,
and there was no context for it, and I don't think I I don't think I let the synapses connect that he was ill. I think I just was like, oh,
And he grew a beard because he never had facial
yeah,
hair.
but I was like, he just got his shit together, you know? Because I'm
He
a
just
big
went
guy.
he just went total hipster.
Yeah, but no, he was struggling and he was keeping it to himself. It's heartbreaking.
Yep. And so, he comes out, and yeah, he's very, very,
Gaunt.
very, very gaunt and skinny, and he has something hooked to his arm, which he later told me was like vitamins and might have been just like a timed out like chemo treatment mixed in there too.
Yeah.
And so we went out to eat, and the thing that was just amazing is he could turn it on. He could still turn it on.
It's Pat.
And so we turned it on, and he downplayed how serious his cancer was, and he was very optimistic that he was going to get over it. And then a random person who was just walking through there with their family saw him, grew up with him. They stopped. They said, "Oh, hey, Pat, how's it going?" And just went with that. And then, in typical Pat fashion, we ended the day by going to Plymouth to go to a record store.
Of
and
course.
just pick through vinyls.
Vinyl.
And he had to cut it short. He was polite about it, but he just said he was getting tired. And I said, "Okay, that's fine."
Yeah.
And I remember my drive back home in silence, just
Of
kind of
course.
like it was great to see him and all that. And
You felt something.
yeah, he did, but he also did tell me that because of the treatment he was going through, he had to sell his car, all of his equipment. And I said, "Say no more. You were invited just as a guest." Like, and I told him I feel bad, and he's like, "Don't feel no. Like, I told you a long time ago I could do it, and that's fine." But I invited him as a guest. He came to my wedding. He had a great time.
Good.
And then he came with Tony, and Tony took him home. And sadly, about 6 months later, he died. And I found out through Tony D.
I found out through you.
Yeah, and Tony D told me on a Saturday. It was really just a quick message, like "Oh, yo, dude, Pat died last night, and I feel numb." And so I called him, and he was at work, so I felt kind of bad because he broke down on the phone, and I said, "I'm sorry, Tony, like because I know your work and all that." And so we met up. We went to his funeral. We went to his wake. His wake was what you would think a wake would be. I mean, they basically played without the talking bits of where you've been. It sounded like when we were on the radio and we were just doing we were just playing song after song after song.
Yeah.
And they played that throughout the entire funeral home, like on surround sound.
Wow.
And it was all like uplifting kind of music, the more
Yeah.
positive and uplifting music.
That was him, though.
And I had never, there were so many people we mutually knew that I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. I mean, we were just picking up, and we're all there for that. And I got to meet his dad. I'd met his dad maybe once, and I met I'd never met his mom. The first time I sadly meet his mom is when in the line greeting people by the casket.
It's awful.
And she literally, like Tony introduced me, and she just goes, "Bobby rocks," and just gives me a big hug.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I've waited so long to meet you. Like, and she said, "And I want to thank you for taking Pat out that day like a year ago, because that meant so much to him." And it was wonderful. And even
in the most painful way.
yeah. And even at his funeral, by the way, for people who don't know his sister Colleen did the eulogy, and I've never seen someone show that much strength.
Wow.
I've never seen somebody be that composed, and I've never seen someone deliver something as eloquently as she did. So Colleen Hurst did a great job. She talked about things like literally when Pat had hospice. So for people who don't know what hospice is, that's when you're going to die. I mean, that's end of life care, preparing for the end of life care. So she said when he would have hospice nurse coming, like this is to give you an idea of how awesome Pat was. With a smile on his face, he would say to the nurses, "If you're not looking for a long-term relationship, I'm your guy." Like, come on, like,
yeah.
Pat. And she says this at the eulogy, and I'm like, that is awesome.
That's
like,
brilliant.
And that's Pat.
Yeah.
That's Pat, because he never really let people know, like, if he was having a bad day. He never let them know.
He would try to use his energy to pick other people up.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
Like, he'd see me down one Sunday, and like between songs, he'd be like, "Dude, you good?" Like, and that's Pat. You don't understand this. There's so few.
Come on, Rem, are you good? Come on, we're gonna go get crab rangoon
Right.
later. Like,
But of course, he'd get me out of the mood, though,
Yeah.
because there was a purity to him. And yeah, I understand for a lot of people this might be strange because we're gushing about someone you don't know. But the point I think that Bobby's making is you all should have known him.
yes.
And very few people in my life, I've lost people, Bobby's lost people, but this was a cataclysmic loss for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that. Like, there was a selfish level of like, what? Like when Bob first told me, there was like 2 hours of denial for me because there was no warning, which that's how Pat wanted it. God bless that. That's one of the strongest things I've ever seen anyone do. If I had cancer, if I went home and had an announcement of cancer right now in like the mail, that shit would be on my TikTok. Only because I don't know how to do things privately.
Yep.
I don't. I've been in social media for 10 years. But I remember being like, that dude, that's Spartan-like strength. He knew death was coming, and he was like, I'm going to face this.
He did everything. For people who don't know, too, so his cancer was fibromyalgia. It's got a longer name, but that's what I can pronounce. It's a rare cancer of the liver that primarily affects people from their mid-teens to their mid-30s.
Wow.
We're talking about a very specific
window.
And yeah, he was diagnosed with stage 4. Jesus. That means it's spread other places in the body. And he fought it for 3 years.
Wow.
And in those 3 years, by the way, everybody, he was put on chemo, gave him a negative reaction, was turning into ammonia in his body. So it was poisoning him more than chemo poisons your body, because that's how it kills cancer. Everybody.
Yeah.
He went with his mom and his aunt over to Tel Aviv, Israel, to do surgery and procedures that are not legal in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you were to see his Facebook at that time, his Facebook is like he's on the beaches of Tel Aviv.
Yeah,
you would think like, you would just think he's like, oh wow, I wish I could go to Tel Aviv, and not know that he's literally doing experimental surgery
to
with
keep himself alive
with the DNA of his mom and his aunt.
Wow.
Like to make a cocktail that would help his body fight off the cancer, because at that point he had I believe 75% of his liver removed.
Jesus.
And he was cancer free for
a minute.
For like 3, 4, 5 months, and then it came back. And it came back and it had spread again. So yeah, it was kind of at that point.
And like,
he didn't let on.
This isn't one of those like Pat did drugs or smoked cigarettes thing. You guys have to know this is a random shot.
Listen, Pat's addiction was like Cumberland Farm sodas and whatever food was in your parents' home
or at the restaurant. Chinese.
A running joke that I remember, I think Rachel tells, is like how they could just be up hanging out when they were like 18, 19 years old. And her mom would come home or wake her mom up, and he would just turn on his Pat Charm and be like, "Hey, how about we just like make some waffles or pancakes?" and she would, because it was Pat. He was just a sweetheart.
Well, because that was a huge part of the show too. Doing the Where You've Been, the huge part of that wasn't just the show, but it was afterward. We would go get Chinese food, and we would go to the same place every time, and we were just so obnoxious. We were. Yep. It was almost like reliving our 20s for me and Bob, who are older, because we were getting drinks at the Chinese food place, and we're making friends with people at the bar, and the waitresses are loving us. And it was there was something about Sundays that was jubilant, and people would pick up on it who didn't even know that we just came from a radio show. It was very, very surreal.
So, Rem, I was actually thinking about this as I woke up earlier today. Do you know what Sundays were for me?
Tell me.
They were that day that I needed to recharge
for work.
Yeah, and because this, like for example, everybody, the podcast here that we're doing, this gives me something that is completely, it's something so 180 from the monotony of my life or my work life, that it really gives me something. It gets all that stuff goes away, gives me something that I'm looking forward to, and I recharge. That's what Sundays on Where You've Been did. And then, like Remy was saying, when we would hang out like that, those were moments that as an adult, it was okay to be a child.
Oh, 100%.
Which, by the way, this is regardless of what, generation you're from. Everybody needs that moment where they can be a child again.
The people who allow you to be that.
That keeps you close to that purity and doesn't let you get just run down by life, and it actually helps you. For me, spiritually, emotionally, that helps you. And that's what, when we would go to the Chinese restaurant, that's what it did for me. And
you know what's funny? I can say this openly. I'm open with people about my mental health battles. I've had BPD, bipolar disorder, my whole life, and I've struggled with it. And, I've gotten a good balance, and I get stuff done. But I definitely have periods in my life where I'm just, like, very introverted, don't want to leave the house, don't want to. And the thing is like, I probably missed 2 radio shows. For me, which is remarkable, considering, like, it was pretty common for me to bail on plans and be bummed out and not want to. And even the weeks I would be bummed out, I would go. Because within 20 minutes of being around you guys,
You would just get that shot of serotonin.
Yeah, and don't forget, it was deep cuts. What we're trying, guys, when we say deep cuts, man, I will say this to people till the day I die. Where You Been was the best fucking radio show musically ever made. I'll stand behind that one. I promise you. Like, we would go from deep cuts of Wu-Tang to deep cuts from, I mean, really think about this.
Pulp. We would play Pulp. Who played Pulp?
Pulp, Andy Warhol's, like shit that people just didn't, and we're saying we got mainstream bands, but we'd do deep cuts and we'd all like bring a song a week. That was key that we knew wasn't in the rotation. For me, it was a lot of Marcy Playground because I knew that the people at the radio didn't understand how good that band was.
I thank you for that too, Remy, because I found Wave Motion Gun because of you.
That
and
song.
It's my favorite song by them.
I can play you that.
It is, and because, I mean, you want to talk about like a song that just makes you feel good and should be a montage to like a moment in a movie where like
then you listen to the lyrics though, right?
Yeah.
Climbing in the oven and shit.
Yeah.
Let me bring the guitar one week and I'll do that.
Or shooting heroin.
Shooting heroin.
That explodes in your body and makes you feel like a wave motion gun from
Battlestar.
Not
Battlestar.
Hold on, I almost feel like I have to sing the song now, like the Star Blazers.
Star Blazers, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Star Blazers, yeah, that's but we all did that. We all brought stuff and introduced new shit, and that was Pat. Pat was just jubilance and he was joy and he was the embracing of music and of people and of conversation and of food. Like he was a holiday. Pat was a holiday.
Yep.
If me and Bob we're Sunday, right? We're just the Sunday guys. Pat always made you feel like he was showing up for Easter or Thanksgiving. There was food on the table and he's sharing his Twizzlers. And yeah, it was so... I know, again, it's weird to gush about somebody, but just the world needed to know. You could hear his smile on the radio when he was doing DJ. You could hear it.
But now I want to kind of bring it back to kind of some characteristics he had. We've talked about his optimism. That is a millennial trait. I mean, that is millennial.
Name of the show, people.
Yeah. So the other traits he had that were like millennials is like he was carefree. He was responsible, but he was carefree at the same time. That is a very hard thing to be.
Childlike.
Yeah. And what I mean by that
in a good way
is like he worked a job at Harvard. Like I think he was a custodian, but that's irrelevant. Like, cause he DJ'd. He DJ'd in Boston.
Yeah.
And that's how I met other DJs. That's how I mean, he would just be like, oh, do you just want to come out to like this bar by Suffolk University? My buddy DJ T-Rex is doing 90s night. And DJ T-Rex would let me do his like system that easily looked like it was like $10,000.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, pick whatever songs you want. I'd be like, oh, can I pick Running by the Far Side? And he'd give me look like, you have to ask that
better.
question. While basic bitches were like, can you play like that song? And he's like looking at them like, no.
Yeah, can you play Apple Bottom Jeans? No, we're not going to do that.
So, and what I mean by his, so he was very spur of the moment thing. Like he'd literally be like, oh yeah, I just felt like I want to go to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. I felt like I wanted to go to Coachella.
I wish I was that impulsive.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I went to the Warped Tour. Oh, and look who I'm taking a selfie with, Chano Moreno from the Deftones.
Deftones, yeah.
And it's like, what?
But that was Pat.
Yeah, and honestly,
Pat.
like,
it was a holiday.
And these people don't look like they didn't look these. If he had photos with celebrities and
they
rock
look
bands,
like regular people.
It was like even they had known Pat for a long time.
Yes, for real. Like they'd be laughing in these photos. And like the other thing is like Pat was, how do I explain this? I'm not negging him, but he was, in terms of women, he was innocent.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And he was so pure. And like he'd always like, if like Pat would be the first guy, if you saw a pretty girl, that he'd like punch me on the arm because he knew that I'd talk to them.
Yep.
So he'd be like, Remy, the redhead at the bar. And I'm like, what? And he's just like, really? You're not nervous to say anything to it? I'm like, no, why would I be nervous? And that would blow his mind. And then we'd bring them over. And Pat was just, it was funny too, because he'd always react to beautiful women like, oh my gosh.
He would fawn over them. Yeah.
But then you'd see his DJ gigs and like he'd just have beautiful women around him in his photos.
Yeah, he was just great at turning it on and off.
And it was like the thing about him is he never shifted into the slime bag.
No, he didn't.
And he could have as a DJ. I'm sorry, but it's an easy thing to do.
He could have just so many ways, but he didn't.
He just didn't.
Because you know why? Because like we've been encapsulating. He was
an angel.
He was Pat. He was a unicorn. He was a unicorn.
Yeah, he really was. Like you meet people rarely. Like my buddy when I was in high school, unfortunately took his life, but he was another Pat. I've only met two. But they're the kind of person that if they found out it was your birthday and they didn't have something for you, They'd take off their fucking jacket and be like, I don't give a shit. I'm sorry. Take this. Like, that's what I mean. Like, we're really trying to strive. Like, this is an honorary episode
Yes.
to somebody that I still cry about regularly.
Yep.
Because when he passed, we all lost something.
Yes.
Everybody. But you know what, though? He passed so gracefully. And I've never seen that. I haven't. I've seen people, you know, whatever, but just... He just was like, I'm going to do this. And then, like he knew. He knew when he saw you, he was passing.
Mm-hmm.
And you had no idea. That's Pat. Carrying the weight.
So come at it from a different angle. At his physically weakest, he was emotionally his strongest.
Yeah. Ooh.
Which is, and I know I just went deep there, but it's true.
Yeah, wow.
But it's true.
No, well said.
And like the great people in our lives, if any of you out there have a person that even comes close to what Pat was.
Oh, go hug them right now.
Not just that, but think about, you know why he was being that strong? He was being that strong for his
us.
mom.
Oh,
and
yes.
for us.
Yes.
He was being that strong for the people around him who had to see it happen.
Yes.
Yes, it was actually happening to him, but he was doing everything he could
To not wear it.
to not have a constant reminder for them.
Yeah, man. It's
Thinking
just,
about other people in the face of your own mortality. That is the epitome of like a great person.
Yeah, and it's the opposite of me. Like, and I'm aware of that. I don't mean like I'm a good person and stuff, but in those instances, I'd just be like, everybody hug me and help me. I can't imagine it. I can't. So sometimes when I think about strength, he's the model I think of now because of all that.
And regardless of what society, the stereotypes they give about millennials, that's what I just explained, what we've been talking about Pat, that's what a millennial is.
Yeah.
That people don't want to give, older millennials. I've said before to people, like somewhere around 1990 is the cutoff. People born before it that are millennials are just different.
It's a different cloth.
Than the people
because it was
born.
A different world, though.
And you're right. It is.
That was a big transition, but
that's why we talk about this, and we use Xennials, whether you think it should be a word or a micro generation or not. We're unique.
Yeah,
we're unique. And so let's get back to like Pat passing. If this gives you an idea, I mean, Facebook. When he passed, I mean, number one, I realized that we had mutual friends from people that I went to high school with.
Yeah, that you had no idea.
And I'm like, when the fuck did you become friends with Pat? And then people would comment on his timeline, about his passing. And this one person, she commented that they met each other once on karaoke night at the Maui in Brockton.
Yeah.
And she's a huge Phil Collins fan. And
as everyone should be.
Yeah. And so she played whatever song she played. I don't remember, but he walked up to her just genuinely geeking out. And they literally had like an hour conversation about Phil Collins.
Can I speculate, please?
Sure.
Okay. So they had an hour discussion about Phil Collins karaoke. We got to keep some of this fun for the people.
Sure.
Okay. So you're at a bar. You're a huge Phil Collins fan. Okay. You're doing karaoke. Everyone listening to this is thinking In the Air Tonight. Stop thinking that.
Right.
Stop it. That's a decent song, but the only part that makes it a good karaoke song is the drum fill.
Yes.
Okay? Karaoke songs should make people want to dance and shit.
I have the perfect song that if you're going to make people dance.
Well, wait, before you say it, because I want to see if we're even on the same page. Okay. Me and Bob don't discuss this stuff.
I'm doing tears in my head. So this is my number one song, but I do have other songs.
I have a feeling, oh man, if we hit this, but because, okay, let's say it's karaoke, right? That means maybe there's two parts of this song. Maybe it's Easy Lover.
Ooh, that was number 2, by the way.
Really? What's yours?
Oh, his cover of You Can't Hurry Love.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, it's
a good karaoke jam.
Yeah.
But you're feeling me too with Easy Lover.
Easy Lover, by the way.
She's the kind of girl you go to.
Yeah. By the way, easily my favorite song.
Oh, it's a fantastic song. So I can see Pat coming up and being like, and just going. Because that's the thing. Pat would make you fall more in love with music you were in love with.
Yep. And so, by the way, this person eloquently, I'll even give her a shout out. Kelly Delaney. The way you talked about how you met Pat once at a karaoke night. You talked to him for an hour. It was literally like 4 years before he passed away,
and you never forgot.
And knowing Pat, he probably friend requested you on Facebook, and you're a nice person, and was like, oh yeah, the guy from karaoke, and like you remembered that. It was a beautiful thing, and it made me feel better. So thank you.
Yeah,
appreciated that.
We see you.
Oh man, and we could just keep
Yeah, I mean, we
could
could
just keep going and going.
And I think we have to be aware that there has to be a cutoff point for the people. But I think for me, what I want to say right now is this. Okay, so Pat was profound, and I didn't get to hug him toward the end, and I didn't see him. So everybody listening to this has to have a Pat in their life, or someone like a Pat, or the closest facsimile to a Pat. So all I ask that you do today is just call him, text him, stop by, give him a hug, bring him a coffee. Because people who are loved need to know they're loved. And I know he did. So I never get sad about that. But I get sad I didn't get to express it enough in the end. So if you have these people around, just remember, man, it's all fleeting here.
And I mean, if I'm tugging at emotional strings, I'm sorry, because I'm not doing that. In the last 5 years, I have lost the two people in my life that I would say are those unicorns.
Yeah.
And Pat is one of them, and my father is the other one.
That's rough, man.
And you know what? The last words I got to say to them both was, I love you.
There you go.
And, you know, and if you can have that moment, especially not just with a unicorn, like anybody you love and care about in your life, the last thing you can do is like a hug and I love you, then that made it easier.
You're winning.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I want to wrap up the episode with a bow. So kind of why are we paying homage to Pat? Yeah. But why did we pay homage to Pat? The main reason is because without Pat, we wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. And I mean that like literally. As Where You Been was wrapping up, Pat was talking to Remy and myself about continuing it as like an online radio show. This was, by the way, this is before podcasts were a thing.
Yeah,
this is before podcasts exploded.
Yeah, truly. Like we would have had one of the first.
Yeah. And Remy and I would even talk, and we would do a little talking with Pat that like Where You Been is Where You Been. Like, we need to do something different.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, we're just saying would have been a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we off and on talked about it, and then just life got in the way. And sadly, we weren't able to do that with Pat.
No.
And so to me, the most fitting way that I can pay tribute on a weekly basis to him is to do this podcast about something that was very important to him, very important to Remy and myself. And to me, it feels like it keeps his spirit going while we do this.
Yeah, I know it does. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, but I knew that I would know when it was time. And Bobby had hit me up, we'd talked about it a lot. And he said, listen, we're burning daylight, bro. Like, I've taught myself how to do all this in the last year or two. And I learned a lot of it from Pat too. So like, I have the knowledge to do this and the equipment. How do you feel? And I think Bobby may have expected some hesitancy because I'm Remy, and my desire is generally to not leave my house. But I was like, yeah, you tell me when, you tell me where. I told him that, and I meant it, and it's happened since.
Yep.
I said, listen, man, this is because Bobby put it wonderfully. This is, for me, my 2022 has been brutal. It's been brutal. Like, I could tell some of you about it right now, but half of you would jump out of a window if I told you about my 2022.
Well, for a little self-disclosure here, I know, and Remy, thank you for being brave enough to put out your mental health issues.
Yeah,
so
man.
I feel like I have to put it forward. So I've suffered with persistent depressive disorder, formerly known as dysthymia, for a long time. And for people who don't know, if they're like, well, what does that mean? I would say like, for somebody who has experienced clinical depression, I would say it is not that intense, but just imagining it continuing for a longer period of time.
Exactly. Imagine not being able to pull the wet blanket off.
Imagine every day being an overcast, cloudy, rainy day.
Yeah.
Cold. Like, just imagine that every day. There's no sunlight. And I take medication for it. I'm like many people. I went to school to learn about what was wrong with me because I did. I did. A little side note: anybody who goes to school for psychology at some point is trying to analyze themselves.
Oh yeah, of course. That's why I got the degree.
It's where it starts.
But I think that it's so these little things are life-saving for me, honestly, because I need more right now because everything is sort of unbalanced. As much as those shows saved me when we used to do them, this is the rebirth of that for both of us.
Yes.
And it gives us a chance to keep his honor alive and essentially like keep ourselves from getting too trapped in our own heads.
Right. I agree.
And so it sucks that sometimes it takes a tragedy.
Sometimes it takes a tragedy for something beautiful to come out of that.
Yeah.
But at least, I apologize to anyone who is faithfully, devoutly religious. I mean this just as a spiritual standpoint. I am a spiritual person. I do believe, in the astral plane. I do believe that he is with us in spirit, and I'm glad, and I'm glad that is that. Like, and the only thing that's missing is that literally he's on another microphone here with us laughing.
Yeah,
we don't have to go to break to laugh our asses off.
No, and I'll tell you this too, guys. The show is awesome.
It's somebody who has a motorcycle, but they also have a system on the microphone
and a tiny penis. Yeah. Let's be honest. If you need to rev your bike and play your music on your little fucking Uber Eats scooter, fuck you. Anyway, sorry, I'm violent and angry. But it's profound, and Pat's legacy will live on. The show was amazing, but it was a train wreck. And sometimes you'll hear me and Bobby talking over each other on here, not often, but it's because that's what we were reared on. Like we were all so geeky in that studio that like there wasn't even a cue, and I would try to set up a ball that we could roll to each other so we knew when to talk. We'd all just get too excited and talk over each other. So I promised you that this podcast isn't a shit show because of what we learned from Pat.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Or maybe it is a shit show and we don't think it is, and that's fine too.
But that's, you know what? Then it's avant-garde art. How about that, everybody?
There you go. Yeah, we're pop art.
Okay, so love you, Pat. I'm doing my point to the sky.
Yes.
Love you, miss you on the anniversary of your passing.
You are here. You are this show, sir.
And we just wanted to pay forward your existence, your beautiful existence.
Well said. Goofy laugh, big smile.
And let everybody know that at least I'll speak for myself here. Personally, my motivation to continue putting this out there is knowing that you would love it and enjoy it.
Yeah, and listen, it's your legacy.
Yep.
We're your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Where you gave me one of the coolest experiences of my life by letting me be on the radio. I wanted that my whole life. I kept telling my family it was going to happen, and my fucking family, raised by boomers, is always like, you're just wanting things that aren't possible. And I said, no, you can manifest, man. You can put good energy out there. And I got called to be on a radio show with amazing people, played music I was so fucking proud of, with some of the nicest people I ever met. And yeah, this show is walking because Pat crawled.
Yep. I agree.
So, we love you, buddy. We miss you.
We love you, buddy.
Shout out to intern Kelly. Hey, stop being so fucking woke. You're really separating yourself from some of your friends by some of the crazy shit you say.
Kelly, I love you too, but I had to mute you. I'm still friends with you, but I had to mute you.
It's too much sometimes, girl.
Yeah, and I Kelly, I want you to come on the show too.
Yes.
I genuinely want you to be a part of a conversation that we can have with you. I want you to be a part of this.
Yeah.
But that can be a talk for another day. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Grab that person that's like Pat in your life and love them. And as always, thank you for coming to the Odyssey. But the Odyssey has ended for today.
We appreciate you.
Take care.